So as I was saying, never buy a cell phone mount from Case Logic because the glue's going to come off on the rubbery stuff that's supposed to hold it into place, and it's not going to work nearly as it should. So, I digress. Back to the Ravens. Now, there is something to be said for the fact that the Miami Dolphins were basically playing with a college, what amounts to a college all-star team, if you want to put it that way. Apparently, I don't know the numbers, I kind of heard this secondhand, but like anywhere from like 20 to 25% of their roster was just signed that week, including 2 of the starters on the offensive line, who apparently started on, like, first practice was that night before, or that day of, or Saturday. So, it's not a surprise that they got the pants beat off of them, and I'm not surprised hearing reports that a lot of the roster wants to get let go or traded, because I don't blame them. I mean, it's totally incumbent on the front office of that organization to put together a working roster. Even as bad as the Browns or the Lions ever were in their heydays of going 0-16 or 1-15 or whatever, I'm pretty sure they had set rosters going into week 1. So that's just inexcusable. The coach, I mean, unless he's the coach and GM, you can't really put the blame on him. What's his name? Flores? Something like that. So they're a disaster. They're probably still going to beat New England next week. That's like their like the Achilles heel of the Patriots, who beat the pants off of the Steelers on Sunday night. Side note, I knew that I was done watching football when Chris Collinsworth, I think it was at the 17-3 point, and Chris Collinsworth says, "Tom Brady's eyes are magical." And I was done. I just couldn't handle football for the rest of the night after that. So I went back to playing BattleTech. So, oh my God, like, dude, just put a zip line from the press box down to the front office so you can rub his back and jerk him off during the commercial breaks. I mean, come on. His eyes are magical. I mean, he is a dreamboat. Don't get me wrong. Tom Brady. Fuck that guy. Anyway. So the Ravens looked pretty good. Lamar Jackson looked pretty good. Granted, it's what amounted to a 7-on-7 drill. He really wasn't pressured all game. They were rushing all over the place. I mean, the Dolphins are just terrible. I mean, you don't want to discount what the Ravens did, but you also want to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. And that, and just the first week of football was garbage for the most part anyway. Just because everybody's still gelling. They're not allowed to practice or hit during practice anymore. And so it's not a very good quality product anyway. So, I mean, if to a non-partisan observer, it was a pretty boring game. The Ravens beat their franchise record for points scored. All sorts of things going on. Lamar's, he's going to be at the top of a lot of fantasy football wish lists next week, I can tell you that. Because his QBR rating was exceptional for a player of second... Whatever, fuck fantasy football. I'm pretty sure there was that Megadeth song that was just FFF. FFF. It was the last song on Cryptic Writings. It was one of the 2 really thrashy, punky songs on that record. That besides the Disintegrators. And I'm pretty sure FFF means fuck fantasy football. But that's another little sidetrack into the recesses of his mind. So the Ravens, yeah, Lamar looked good, defense looked good. The Dolphins are trash. So it's hard. What do you take away from that game? Yeah, you feel good, you feel confident. It's good that you had a very solidifying win in week 1, going into what amounts to a pretty brutal schedule. I mean, I can't remember exactly who, but I'm pretty sure they play I want to say Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Sandy. They play a pretty tough schedule for the next few weeks. They have a pretty tough schedule all around, but we'll see. Pet peeve: don't give me this stuff about, well, they're playing a last place or first place schedule from last year. That whole thing, your record from last year, determines exactly 2 games out of your schedule every year. Everything else is predetermined on a cycle. You're playing your divisional foes twice, that's 6 games, and then you rotate a divisional or a conference team and a conference division and a non-conference division on a rotation. So you're going to play the Buccaneers every 4 years no matter what, even if they're winning the Super Bowl every year or if they're the worst team. And then the last 2 games in the slot, that's determined by the 3rd place, 4th place team, whatever. So if you ever hear that, or if you any of these talking heads bring that thing out, or if somebody quotes it at a bar, and if they're really drunk and you think you can take them in a fight, tell them you're a fucking idiot. It only determines 1/8 of your schedule. And that'll really, don't say 2 games, say 1/8. And see if they can work out the fractions before they throw their first punch. All right, so now on to the 49ers. Now, this was actually a much more interesting contest to the nonpartisan observer because it was actually sort of close until the last 2 minutes. Although, if you watch the first half, you're probably thinking, is this week 1 of the preseason? Who the hell are these professional athletes? I'm pretty sure the Bama Clemson All-Stars could beat either of these teams right now. It was sloppy. Penalties, touchdowns being called back from penalties. For a while, the Niners' best offensive play was a defensive holding call. I mean, it was terrible. Jimmy G obviously took a break from curing world hunger and cancer to have a very bad game. Or below average, let's say. He had 1 pick 6, which was terrible. It was a terrible throw. Terrible decision. And beyond that, it was off target. Everything, they were keeping it short and intermediate. I get it, they don't want to test the knee too much, but he did not look that great. The running game was suspect. I guess we're never going to find out how good Jerick McKinnon is because he's on IR again. He was supposed to be Kyle Shanahan's guy, who's really going to thrive in this offense. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's running up hella scores on Madden while he's on IR for the first 2 years of his contract. Defense was pretty solid. I'll give them that. They were starting to wear down against the run in the 3rd quarter. I was getting worried. They got a little bit of a lead going into the 3rd quarter. And finally, it was still kind of close. Tampa had the ball with just over 2 minutes left in a timeout, and they were down by 6. And that's when Jameis Winston made an even worse decision than Jimmy G, and he got pick 6. He actually got pick 6 twice. Richard Sherman caught his first interception as a Niner, ran it all the way back. Good for you, 25. And then Witherspoon, I don't remember what number he is. So he ran one back. He got the sealant on the victory, so to speak. They converted the 2-point conversion, made it a 14-point game, and then it was over. But still, the run defense starting to show a little bit of fatigue in the 3rd quarter. I don't know about this whole wide 9 thing that they're talking about. The only time I remember anybody using that term for a scheme is when they had that disastrous stint in Philly a few years back where they brought in what's his ass, Juan Castillo. I think he might still be the O-line coach for the Ravens. But at the time, they're like, hey, you're good at coaching O-line. We've got a job for you. What's that? What would that be? Am I going to be offensive coordinator? No. We're going to make you defensive coordinator. and you can install the wide 9 where we can get our asses kicked and run all over. That's my experience with that term. So they're apparently doing something similar, just because the Niners picked up all these different pass rushers. By that I mean 2 or 3 guys. D Ford, who was pretty good yesterday, and then Bosa, not Joey, but the lesser, the younger Bosa, the lesser Bosa, Eli Bosa, whatever you want to call him. He had a pretty good game, first game out. So I like that there was decent pass rush. They didn't have to do a lot of crazy blitzing or anything like that. But it was dicey, not as much of a solid victory as the 31-17 score would imply. Like I said, it was still up in the air until the last 2 minutes, and then they put it away with a pick 6, which was fun to see. I mean, they had 3 picks yesterday. They didn't have 3 picks all year last year. As a whole, I think they had like 7 takeaways for an entire season. I mean, that's terrible. You can give me all the stuff you want about Jimmy G going down against Kansas City. They weren't playing that great when he went down. I think they were 0-2 or 1-2 at the time when he was out for the season. And the defense didn't get anywhere near where it needs to be until the last 6 games. The Nick Mullins era of 49er football. So it was funny, like DeForest Buckner, he made a couple plays. That's number 99 for you keeping score. I got a soft spot in my heart for 49ers numbered 99. I know Alden Smith's a piece of shit, but damn, he was good. And Buckner actually seems to be a decent guy based on interviews. I mean, you never know. But he was kind of quiet for the second and third quarter. And of course, they make a mention of him. We haven't called his name. Next play, boom, 2-yard loss. DeForest Buckner tackles in the backfield. Now, I know, side note, little editorial. I know Rondé Barber played for the Bucs. I think he played his entire career there. He is, in my opinion, a Hall of Famer. I thought he was in already, but apparently he isn't. I figured him for a first ballot guy, but I guess not. I think, that defense was tremendous. Point being, he's a Buck. How much can you talk about Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians? I mean, God, I know that the first half was terrible. I mean, could you tell, well, they're really going to turn this thing around one, fucking false start at a time. God, that game was terrible for the first half. Then the second half, it turned around. It was actually entertaining to watch. And the Niners won, which I'm very, very pleased about, of course. So, looking on to week 2. Don't know who they're playing. That's my level of football fandom. Back in the day, I would have this whole thing memorized. I would know the schedule front to back. I'd know the entire roster, their numbers, who's on the practice squad, who the quality control coach is, blah, blah. No more. I can't saturate myself with it to that level. And after you read 5 websites worth of football columns, it all starts to sound the same. It reads the same. And whatever. So, week 1, not in the books. We got 2 games tonight. Was it the Raiders and the Broncos? I almost said the Braiders. That'd be pretty funny. I guess they're the Las Vegas Raiders now. Why didn't they're going to change their name to the Bagmen? The Las Vegas Numbers Runners. Get it? Because they're running on the field and they have numbers on their back. That's what we mean by that. I can't remember the other game. It's the other Monday night game. Who gives a shit? Anyway, that's Football Report. Nerd Report. I've been collecting comics still. Just finished up the Spider-Man Life Story series by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. It was excellent. If you're into comics, if you like Spider-Man, it's highly recommended. I'm a single issues floppy guy, so I have them all, but if that's not your thing, I definitely recommend getting the trade when it comes out. It's a very good read. Zdarsky's arguably the best writer at Marvel right now. I'm reading the whole House of X, Powers of X thing, which it's pretty good. I don't have a master's degree in anything, so I'm having a hard time understanding some of it. And there's like a fucking reading order. Okay, man. I get it. You gotta boost sales however you can. So we're gonna have 15 covers of this one book, and you gotta read it before this book that's got 16 covers, and then after that you read it. It's good so far. So there's that. And then I've been listening to a lot of Chelsea Wolfe recently. She's a dark folk artist, I guess. I mean, pretty popular. I'd never heard of her until I got into Russian circles. And she's got a guest vocal track on their record Memorial. And I really dug that track, specifically her vocal parts about it. So I read up on her and just started listening to her stuff on Amazon. And it's pretty damn good. If you're into any kind of goth electronica, I highly recommend it. I kept reading reviews and not interviews, but just write-ups on her and stuff, and they kept telling how doom influenced she was. You don't really get that with the early stuff. The later albums definitely have that kind of doom metal vibe to it. Really distorted, down-tempo guitar work. Really, really cool stuff. Kind of like, I guess if you could mash up Nine Inch Nails and Tori Amos. That's the way my pea brain processes it. That's how the description I come up with. So check her out. She's on an acoustic tour right now, apparently, which I'm not particularly interested in an acoustic set because I like the really crazy electronic stuff she does. So maybe next time. I think a new record's coming out as well. So that's my bandwagon artist of the weekend. Not much else. Heard Havoc's in the studio. They're getting a new record together. That should be awesome. Love those guys. Still haven't seen them live, but maybe next time. Likewise, with High on Fire, they're coming around the East Coast. Gonna have to catch that. So it's almost time to get home. A little bit of a rambling thing. We're gonna have to chop it up in post to account for the shitty fucking cell phone rack that I spent $20 on. But anybody meaning anyone, can have a nice day. Well, anyway, have a good one. Take care. Enjoy my nose hairs and stay safe.